Denounced that the government of the United States, together with Elon Musk and the international fascist of Milei, are at the forefront of a destabilization process and a coup d'etat at this moment against the Venezuelan people and against Venezuelan democracy.
What does he mean?
Elon Musk, for whatever reason, came out before the election and endorsed the opposition candidate, actually endorsed Maria Corina Machado, who was not even on the ballot, but is the main opposition figure leading the rallies and pretty much the campaign of the candidate Edmundo Gonzalez. Elon Musk has, as we know, an interest in natural resources that are needed to build batteries. Venezuela, and on top of having gold and oil reserves, has lithium, coltan, all the different minerals that are going to be key going forward into building the batteries that Elon would like to build. You may recall in 2019, there was actually a coup in Bolivia, overturned the government there temporarily in a similar instance where there was a progressive government that just wanted to have national control over the resources. And then this military dictatorship came in and started selling it off to players like Elon. And at the time, someone mentioned this to Elon, that there was a violent coup in Bolivia, and he responded on X or Twitter at the time saying, "We will coup whoever we want." And it was kind of a joke then, but the fact that he's now decided to take such a strong line on Venezuela is disappointing to me as someone who does appreciate what Elon has attempted to do for free speech and our rights on X. I think it's disappointing that he now is, getting involved in a regime change scheme. And he also has had this relationship with Milei that is curious. He's gone down there, and so have his the media figures that he's boosted on X, such as Bari Weiss, Ben Shapiro, all gone and done puff pieces for Milei. He went down there and signed deals with Milei himself. And Milei in Argentina, since coming into power, has actually expanded the U.S. military presence in his own country, is opening a naval base. And so it is a concern for Venezuelans and other governments in the region that Argentina is now turning into a staging ground for potential military operations against governments in the region. And so I hope that we don't escalate any further, because if Argentina were to put any pressure on Venezuela, or if the U.S. is involved there with State Department funding and CIA-backed groups, I've documented all that in my book, if they decide to turn up the heat and force Maduro out through some sort of military action or pressure in the streets, then we're looking at a civil war type scenario in our hemisphere, not to mention the fact that Russia is heavily involved in Venezuela. They consider Venezuela one of their key international partners. They have military advisors and Russian military equipment there, as do the Iranians, have deep ties with the Venezuelans. So if war were to break out, we would actually be looking at an expansion of the global war that we see now in the Middle East and Ukraine into the American continent, which I think would be very dangerous, not something I want to see.
Anya, nobody else is talking about this, and I'm deeply grateful for the way you tie it all together. Tell us about your book, Corporate Coup.
Yeah, well, what I document in the book is how the policy of recognizing a shadow government in Venezuela provided cover for the United States, the United Kingdom, and its and our allies, as well as private corporations, to pretty much carry out a looting of Venezuela's internationally stored wealth. I identify the characters that drove this policy on the Venezuelan side and found that they all directly worked as agents of corporations that are now cashing in on the looting of the assets that were frozen as a result of this coup policy. So they recognized a shadow government and said, oh, all of these Venezuelan government bank accounts in the US and Europe, they're ours now. We froze them, and now we're turning them over to the people that we, and actually Venezuela's sovereign gold deposits in the US ended up somehow in an account linked to the Federal Reserve Bank in New York. So, I mean, that's just bizarre. It was a policy actually that acted as a kind of practice test of what we saw then the Biden administration roll out against Russia, where they froze Russian assets, stole Russian assets, and are now talking about paying frozen Russian government assets out to the government of Ukraine. This is exactly what we did with the Venezuelans. We stole their money and then started paying it out to our collaborators and our agents working to overthrow the government there. the resolution of my book, Judge, is that this policy that we see in Venezuela, we saw with Russia, it's escalated. We've done it to Iran. So many other countries, our aggressive sanction policy and our propaganda media war. The only thing that it's resulted in now is countries breaking with the West, actually forming a multipolar world that is less reliant on the dollar, not reliant on the SWIFT exchange in Switzerland. Instead, Russia, China, India, these countries are coming together to build a world where they don't have they don't have the same ideology across these various countries, and they recognize that. They see that as a strength. They actually just want to create a basis for international exchange that is actually based in honoring the political sovereignty, territorial integrity, and win of every country, and allowing them to kind of just make agreements that are mutually beneficial. And that's a world that I hope the United States can one day participate in. I just think that our greatest obstacle at this point is our own government. It's our own government that is working in the interests of corporations and, in many cases, foreign lobbying groups. So the corporate coup, yes, it targeted Venezuela, it's targeted many other countries, but ultimately it was something that happened in this country a long time ago. I think a bankers and corporate coup kind of took over from the U.S. public, and we just need to restore, as I said, sovereign rule and constitutional rule in the United States. Then we'd be better off going forward in this multipolar world.
Then we'd be better off going